Welcome to the podcast that will teach you how to successfully invest in and build steady streams of passive income from the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Veteran real estate investors Kevin Bupp and Charles Dehart from Mobile Home Park Academy will personally share with you the valuable lessons they've learned along their journey as mobile home park investors, so that you too can learn how to build massive cash flow and huge profits from this extremely lucrative niche. So without further ado, let's welcome your hosts for today's show, Kevin Bupp and Charles Dehart.
Welcome, guys and gals, to the Mobile Home Park Academy's weekly podcast, where we'll provide all the information that you need to know to successfully locate, negotiate, close on, and make huge profits from the lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. I'm your host, Kevin Bupp, and today I'm actually rolling solo. Charles is he's tied up with something. I don't know what it is, but he's tied up with something. So I'm going to be rolling solo today. And on today's show, we're going to be sharing the stage with Clinton Grimm. He's a park investor who's been in the business for over 17 years now. And so the interesting thing about Clinton is that he purchased a park that I had looked at many years ago, and just happens to be the one park that I still kick myself in the butt for not purchasing. And at that time, I was just getting started in the business. I was very naive, had a lot of real estate experience, but just naive as a park investor, and I didn't know how good of terms that I had negotiated with the seller, and I ended up getting cold feet, and I backed out of the deal. Well, Clint came along and bought that deal, and so today we're going to be speaking with Clint about that park, as well as his other involvement in the park business, and just really dig into his business so that we can potentially walk away from the show as smarter park investors. But before we introduce Clint to the show, I'd like to run through just a few quick housekeeping items. The first one here is we've got some partnership opportunities. We've got currently, as of today, as of this recording, we've got 5 parks under contract, and we've got some partnership opportunities available. If you have any interest whatsoever in working with my team and I on a few of the parks that we're working on here, then you can shoot an email to partner@mobilehomeparkacademy.com. Again, partner@mobilehomeparkacademy.com. Now, that is an autoresponder email, and almost immediately you'll get an email sent back to you that will have a link to it of one of our offerings right now, which, just so you know, it's a 2-park West Virginia deal that we've been working on for a number of months. We do have multiple other deals under contract, and so that's not the only one that we have working at the moment. And so you'll get an email back with details on that park, and you'll also get the email will also have a link in it to a calendar. And so if you have an interest in talking to us about the additional opportunities that we have, go ahead and click on that calendar link and schedule time to talk with Charles and I, okay? And we'll get on the phone together and just fill you in with a little bit more of the details that the other parks are working on and what a partnership might look like, okay? Next laundry item, if you ever find yourself in the Tampa Bay area, based in Clearwater, if you ever find yourself here on business or pleasure, look us up. Charles and I would love to meet you, have a beer, have a coffee, bite to eat, whatever it might be, whatever your time allows, okay? Shoot us an email, mobilehomeparkacademy@gmail.com, and just let us know what your travel plans are, and we will try to coordinate a time when you're here to get together. And then lastly, just like we have Clint in the show today, this is somewhat of a casting call here. If you're a mobile home park investor, if you're an owner, operator, if you own mobile home parks, or if you're in this industry and you're active in it, would love to have you on the show as a guest. If you have an interest in being a guest in the show, shoot us an email, mobilehomeparkacademy@gmail.com, and we'll get on the phone together and talk about what it is you do, and talk to you about being a guest on the show. So that's all we have for laundry items. So let's go ahead and get on to the show here, which I know you've been waiting for. So let's welcome Clint to the show. Clint, how you doing today?
Hey, Kevin. How's it going?
It's going good, man. It's going good. I really appreciate you joining me here today. And like I said in the beginning, it's somewhat of an interesting call because we hooked up based on this podcast here. That's how we kind of got connected. And then we just realized before we started recording that you and I have actually shared dialogue over the years, probably you said 4 or 5 years ago, probably about some other parks that you had actually owned, me looking to potentially buy. And then you ended up buying this one park that I got cold feet and backed out of. And so it's kind of interesting how this industry really shows you how small and tight-knit it is, that our paths have crossed multiple times, yet this is the first time we've actually ever talked on the phone, I believe. So kind of interesting. Clint, if you would, I gave you a little bit of a background, not much there, but if you could, take a few minutes, tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got into this business.
Sure. I was in the retail industry, the automotive industry, for 20 years, and doing about 60 to 80 hours a week, and I knew the clock was going to run out on that I wasn't going to be able to do those kind of hours, didn't want to do those kind of hours. So I started looking, and this was in the late 90s. And so I got into the stock market, and My first year in the stock market, I made 50%. I didn't realize 50% return, and I didn't realize that in a booming market, everybody looks like a genius. Well, the next year I lost 50%, and the year after that I lost another 50%, which doesn't leave you with much left over. So I realized as an investor I wanted to have control of my asset, and that's one thing I didn't have in stocks. So I started looking. The next best thing I saw was real estate. So I bought the books, bought the tapes, all the CDs, and everything was single-family homes. And I just didn't like the idea that you either get 100% or you get zero. That I didn't like that template. And so I had a conversation with a very wealthy man I knew who was in real estate. And so I went to lunch with him one day, and I asked him where he invested. And he said, well, let me ask you a question. If I was going to build single-family homes close to your neighborhood, what would you say? I said, great, go for it. He said, if I was going to build apartments, what would you say? I said, okay, no problem. He said, if I was going to build a mobile home community close to your neighborhood, what would you say? I said, over my dead body. He said, so what should you invest in? I said, single-family homes and apartments. He said, no, you dummy, mobile home parks, because they don't make them anymore. And so that really struck a chord with me, that it's a limited asset, that they're really not building them anymore. Unlike apartments, single-family homes, it just doesn't have that sexy appeal that mobile home communities, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What that brings to the table.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that's when I started looking. I started just looking everywhere I could. I went to the goofy websites because there wasn't really, LoopNet wasn't in depth as far as mobile home communities then. And this was right around 2000. And I was scanning the newspaper one day in the Midwest, and I saw owners selling a mobile home community, 35 spaces, owner finance. So I figured I'd jump right in. And so that's when I bought my first park, was in 2000.
Wow. Okay. So somewhere in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Okay. Good deal. So 2000, ever since then, this is solely what you focused on? Has this been your prime business?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've done that. I've done some consulting. But as far as where to invest, it's been nothing but mobile home parks since then. Okay.
Good deal. Well, your business is somewhat unique, I found, as we were chatting a little bit before we started the show here, in that, you found out a couple years into the business that you're not necessarily a buy and hold investor. And, I think more commonly than not, people that get into this business are looking for cash flow. They want to buy and they want to maintain a cash flow. And so that's what they're looking to buy into, is this cash stream. And you're a little different. You found that your niche, or your forte, really fell in the buy, fix up, and flip for a profit type business model. And so can you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, how your model, how it started out, like with the intent of buying for cash flow, and then how it really evolved into this buy, fix, and flip type strategy?
Well, I think it's important as an investor, you find out where do you want to go with it? Or do you want to be the buy and holder, or do you want to flip? What kind of investor are you? And I really thought I was a buy and holder until I started making improvements to the park, raising the rents, things like that, cutting expenses, and then I'm sitting there with this equity, and so I did the math, and I didn't like the return I was getting on my equity that was sitting there. So I sold it, bought another park. This was more of a fixer-upper, and then same thing. I'm sitting with equity, and then I realized at that point that, I'm not a buy and holder. That just doesn't seem to work for me. I guess I don't know if it's boredom. I don't know what it is, but I like to find the ones that are a little more run down, that need a little more TLC, go in, fix them up, and then sell them.
Okay. How many parks have you flipped to date? I mean, how many have you owned since the first day you started investing? Do you keep track of it? You keep counting? You have like a board on your wall where you're putting notches in it?
No. I would say maybe a dozen.
Okay. Good deal. And so, the part of the story I'm excited to get to is about the park in Florida. And I gave you guys a little bit of a background on that park, and this is not the reason why we're having Clint in the show, because he'd be on either way because he's an experienced investor and involved in this asset class. But there was a park that I looked at, and Clint, when did you probably bought? I guess it's been at least 4 years, right? 4 years or 3.5, 4, something like that. And it was one of the first parks that we had actually tied up and put under contract, and it was in a small area called Palatka, Florida, which it's not really even part of a metro, I don't believe. I mean, it's about 45 minutes east of St. Augustine, and I don't know what the next closest city is, but it's kind of just this like small town. It doesn't have a ton, it doesn't really have much of a local economy. I mean, it's just there. It's like a small Florida town. Maybe you can expand on that a little bit, Clint. But we looked at this park there. I found it on LoopNet, and based on what I knew of the business at that point in time, which I was very much a virgin. I mean, I understood real estate. I've owned hundreds of apartment units, hundreds of single family homes, and so I got real estate. And I got income real estate, but yet I was still a virgin in the mobile home park space. And so we went and looked at this park. It was Clint. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was 70 pads. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
70 pads, city water.
Yep. 70 pads, city water, city sewer. It was right behind either like a Bell's, or it was right behind a shopping center there. So, I mean, it was in town, laid out really nice. It actually laid out really well. Owner had owned it for quite a long time. He lived inside the park in one of the trailers, and lot rents were really low. I think they were about $120 or $130 a month, and he had a ton of vacant park-owned homes. I think about 20 or 25 or so, and half of them were in not too bad a shape, just minor cosmetic, paint, a little bit of carpet here and there, and a couple of them were in really bad shape. But he was willing to owner finance it, and I can't recall we had it under contract for. I think we had it under contract for like $550 with $150,000 down maybe, and I forget what the terms were, but they were really attractive terms. Now that I look back, they were very, very attractive terms, and I just got cold feet. It was really the upside in that park was the rent increase. The upside in that park was really going in, raising rents first off, but number two, renovating or selling off those park-owned homes. I mean, that was all the upside that was there in that park. And there were some other small components of upside, but those were the two big ones. That I think the part that gave me cold feet about that deal was there's not a lot of comps in Palatka. I mean, there's like a couple other parks, but they're really nice. I mean, they're like nice retirement communities. And so I started looking for rental comps, and the closest I found was, 240 or 250, but it was not a comparable type community. I mean, and I just, now that I know a lot more now today, and I think I would have been very comfortable raising rents to 225 or 230 or even 240, and it wouldn't skip a beat. But back then, I knew that we had to at least get to 200 in order to really get excited about the upside, and I didn't feel comfortable doing it. And again, I know better now today that was a mistake, but that's actually the real reason we backed out of the deal. It wasn't because of all the renovations that were needed. That's actually one of my strong sets, but it was really the rent increase of concerned about people moving out of us raising rents. And so, Clint, why don't you tell us a little bit about the deal? What you ended up getting into it for, and then what'd you do? I mean, so I kind of gave the background of it, what I thought the upside was. So tell me about, let me look at it through your eyes, what you saw in that park, and then how'd you actually turn it around?
Sure. Well, as an individual, I can move very quickly if I see something that I like. So when I saw it, I gave him asking price for it. So maybe I overpaid. I don't know.
What was it, 600 that they were asking for it?
Yeah. $599.9.
Right.
Yeah. And you were at $550, so yeah, I might have paid too much. But you're right, a lot of vacant park-owned homes, but I like park-owned homes. For me, as an investor, that's what I like, because I like the return I can get on park-owned homes. And it gives me a lot of flexibility. I can really push the lot rent. So that's exactly what we did. We went in, we rehabbed the homes, and that's what we like to do when we go in. We go in and we make a lot of improvements. We create a lot of goodwill. So we went in and painted every home in the park. We went and cool sealed every roof in the park. We power sprayed every home, whether it's a tenant-owned or a park-owned home. And we give away free fire detectors, carbon dioxide detectors if they don't have one. Usually we'll come in and pave the roads. So we really try to create a lot of goodwill when we come in. And the lot rent at the time was $160.
Okay.
So after about 90 days, that's when we hit them with a lot rent increase.
Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here from the Mobile Home Park Academy. I'm very sorry for interrupting your show, but I have something really special I'd like to share with you. If you haven't heard already, Charles and I are offering something really cool here at the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast, and I just wanted to make sure that you knew about it. We're offering a free 30-minute phone consultation with the two of us, where you can ask us anything that you'd like about mobile home park investing. Maybe you're brand new and you just have a few questions that you'd like answered. Or maybe you want to run a deal past us and have us help you walk through the evaluation process. Or maybe you're an already experienced park owner and you just want to bounce a few ideas off of us. Whatever it is, Charles and I, we're very excited to speak with you. And there's absolutely no ulterior motive with these calls, so you don't need to worry about us trying to upsell you or pitch you on some kind of product or service. These calls are simply our way of giving back and connecting with others who share our same passion for this business. And just to reiterate, it doesn't matter if you're brand new or a seasoned investor. These calls are open to everyone. But there is one catch. It has to relate to mobile home parks. And so if you'd like to schedule that free 30-minute call with Charles and I, please send an email to freecall@mobilehomeparkacademy.com. Again, freecall@mobilehomeparkacademy.com, and almost immediately you'll receive an email back with a link to our calendar. And if you haven't received that email within 5 minutes or so, be sure to check your junk folder, okay? Sometimes it ends up there. And when you go to schedule that time on our calendar, please include a little background on yourself as well as what you'd like to discuss on our call. But please be sure that it relates to mobile home parks. Charles and I really look forward to connecting with you, and we look forward to helping you in your journey to success as a mobile home park investor. Now let's get back to the show.
And we moved it to 250.
Wow. Good deal. And so tell me what happened when you raised it to 250. Did you lose any residents?
No. They didn't like it, but we didn't lose anybody. Because they saw that we were going to improve the park. So I like to create a lot of value before I just come in and start, moving a lot of chairs and change a lot of things. So we came in, made a lot of improvements. And then, then we pushed the lot rent to 250, and then on the park-owned homes, we had the lot rents at 350. So it would average out to be about 300 across the board.
Gotcha. Wow. Okay. And how long did it take you to go through the renovations process of all those homes? There was over 20 of them, if I can recall correctly. There was more than 20.
You're right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, your memory serves you well. There were a lot of park-owned homes, a lot of vacant park-owned homes. And it's funny because we ran a Craigslist ad in the Gainesville area. And you're right, I did not get a hit. I mean, when I went to closing, this ad had been running for 2 weeks, and my phone didn't ring, and I was getting nervous. Because there are metrics that I look for, and I like to run test ads. I like to have the phone blowing up before we come in.
You can't do it in that market. I did the same thing, and that I didn't get any response because Palatka is too far away from any Craigslist market. It doesn't get a pull.
So the phone wasn't ringing. I'm going to closing. I've got this fear I'm going to have 20 vacant park-owned homes. But somebody mentioned trying it in a different section of town, running a Craigslist ad. So I ran it in St. Augustine, and then we ran newspaper ads. So we ran huge newspaper display ads for homes that were for sale. I just don't like to run small liner ads. We like to run big display ads. So those got the phones ringing, and we were selling houses before they were ready. We were taking deposits before they were ready because this was a huge. It's a little bit on the poor side of town. So. Again, I like to stay with those metrics. I like 100,000 plus medium home values, and it wasn't that. But because we offered homes rent to own or lease with an option, we were able to really secure a lot of tenants and move them in.
So you were doing like a lease option or a rent credit type. You weren't selling them for cash?
If I could, I would. If it was an older home, like in the 70s, 60s or 70s, I usually sell those off for cash. I won't carry a note on those. But if they're older, we'll carry a very short-term note because we like to have them see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yep, absolutely. And so how long was that entire turnaround process before you exited, or before you finished out your last rehab? And I know that when you have park owned, there's always a rehab coming because you got people that turn and things like that. But for like the first phase, how long did it take you to get through that first phase?
Probably 6 months. Okay. We had a huge 90, 120 days. We had, because I brought a crew in and we were rehabbing homes left and right. Because I don't like to wait. I like to get it done as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. So we brought in crews, and like I said, we were selling homes like crazy. And we got the majority of them sold within 6 months.
That's amazing.
And then we'd have some stragglers.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. So were you local at that time? I know you live on the West Coast now. Were you local to that park? Like, where were you based out of?
I was based out of Atlanta.
Okay, so you're far away. So when you brought your crew in, did you bring it? Do you have some people you've worked with in the past you kind of travel with, or do you go find help wherever that park might be?
We'll do a little bit of both. If I can bring some guys in I've used in the past and I know their quality of work, we'll bring them in. Otherwise, I'll run a Craigslist ad and do it like that. Pull in some local people.
Okay, so
sometimes you'll find some people in the park that you could use, which I prefer to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm just going to estimate you probably have of your own capital in addition to the whatever down payment you put in. You probably got about another 150, 200 grand sunken into the park between all the capital improvements you've done, at least in that first phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so exactly.
So you're into it for about 800, and then you just told me you just got a contract on it recently, and I think for one. Can you or is it sold? Have you sold it yet? Is it gone? Can we talk about this or no?
Yeah, it's closed.
Oh, it's closed. Okay, so we can talk about it. Good deal. So, and you closed it out for 1.4, correct?
Yeah, just sold it for 1.4.
That's not a bad day or not a bad year.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Yeah, I don't know. And as it was operating, have you ever figured out? Because I know that the term. How much did you put down on that? I mean, was it a 20% down that he was requiring? I can't remember. It wasn't a lot.
It was maybe $1.25, something like that.
Yeah. So the cash on cash returns. I mean, once you got that place stabilized, so after that first year, into that second year, that thing was just a cash cow. I mean, you were putting money in your pocket, hand over fist.
Yeah, you're right, and that's one that I toyed with. I'm like, man, this is really flowing. I don't know if I want to sell it, and the right offer came along, and here I am. Now I'm parkless.
So now what? Tell me how you find parks. Tell me what your strategy looks like to find parks, and do you have other? I mean, do you always have like kind of the next project lined up, or you kind of hang out in the shadows and wait till like an opportunity strikes?
I try to, because with 1031, you've only got 45 days to identify. So I try to have a lot of feelers out. I like to be able to move from one asset very quickly to the next, to keep it flowing. So. I look all over. I have a lot of agents that I have relationships with, and I'll make a deal with them. If they bring me something right before it hits market, I'll let them list it for me. So I have some guys that'll bring me stuff and give me about 48 hours to make a decision on it. Mm-hmm. So I find them that way. I'll send out postcards, mobile home park store, LoopNet. I'll look all over, anywhere and everywhere.
Okay. Good deal. And so you're on the West Coast now, but you look at parks in the Midwest and in the East Coast. Is that going to affect your business model at all? Like if you got another big rehab project like this one in Palatka, is there a room for concern on your part being so far away, or do you just literally go and move to that area for the period of time that you have to be there?
Well, while the majority of the work's being done, I'll be there to oversee. But then once the rehab's over, then, it's just putting your controls in place. You got to have a system, and you got to have a process. And so I have a process that we put in place, and I don't need to be there. I might visit maybe once every 6 months or so. Yeah. But I don't need to be there.
Well, I ask you that question. I mean, do you have a wife and kids? If you don't mind me asking, a personal question, but do you?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that becomes I'm assuming that becomes part of the challenge is being away when you have a big project like that going. And we're trying to we've done some really big turnarounds. Just labor intensive type projects, and we've got one right now that we're working on, and just that is the challenging component of like a project like that one is it takes you at a certain point. You have to be there for the first couple of months, at least be there multiple days a week, every week for the first couple of months in order to keep things going efficiently. And that becomes challenging, especially if you're a one-man show. If you're just getting into the business and you only have yourself as the resource, that's a challenging thing to overcome. But
no, you're right. Especially when you're doing that kind of rehab, when you're rehabbing a lot of homes, and not just one or two, but if you're doing 5, 10, or 20, and you've got a few crews that are working, your costs can really get away from you if you don't keep a pretty good thumb on it. So I got somewhat of a business partner that I work with. You got to hire to your weakness, right? And he knows infrastructure, he knows rehab, so he'll come in and he'll oversee a lot of it. I just don't know that one guy can do everything. Mm-hmm. I think there's too many moving parts in this business.
Yeah.
To be able to do it.
So what have you noticed?
You're too one-dimensional.
Go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
I was just going to say you end up being too one-dimensional if it's just you doing everything yourself. If you can hire to your weakness.
It's not fun either.
Find people that. Yeah, exactly. So, infrastructure-wise, I've got somebody that helps out with that.
Okay. So how have you seen the business change? I mean, the industry has changed, I'm sure, drastically since 2000, since you got involved. I mean, back then, like you said, LoopNet probably existed, but it wasn't as, as elaborate as it is today. And like you literally would have to search newspapers back then. Like you couldn't get on, the internet was around, but or was it? Yeah, it was around. It was around at that point. But you'd be looking in newspaper finding parks for sale or business for sale type websites probably. Tell me about from back then to today, like what kind of changes you've seen, and if you had a crystal ball, like where you see the next 5 years going with this industry.
Well, yeah, back then it was very difficult to find mobile home parks. I was scouring newspapers from all over the country. You didn't really have a lot of expertise that was out there, so I know there was a couple parks that I made a mistake on as far as my due diligence goes and my game plan. I tried to get into the rental business, and that is not a good way to go. I don't want to be in the rental business. I don't want to own the home, so I really want to sell the homes off as quickly as I can to get out of the rental business. I would go through, is it Country Farm or Land and Country website to look for parks, because there just wasn't really a central location. It was very difficult to find parks for sale back then. Or I made phone calls, or you see a residential real estate agent who's got one mobile home community. That's how I picked up one for sale in his portfolio. And it was a lady whose husband had just died, so he was a friend of hers, so he figured he'd list it for her. So I kind of stumbled on that one in Oklahoma. So it was very difficult then to find the communities. And how it's changed now, there's been a tremendous amount of exposure and education. Mm-hmm. Mobile home park stores, a big one. You guys bring a lot to the forefront also. So, in fact, that's how I stumbled across you. I was just searching for something related to mobile homes because I'm always trying to educate myself, and that's how I saw your podcast, and I don't remember which one it was, one of the earlier ones I was listening to, and I was like, hey, he's talking about the park that I just sold. It was amazing because you're hitting it dead on with lot rent, number of spaces, number of homes, and I was like, that's the exact same park.
Isn't that funny? What a small world, right? Small world. A small but very lucrative world.
Well, sometimes you gotta push yourself out of the comfort zone a little bit, and like I said, even though the phone wasn't ringing, I knew if we had affordable housing, and that's one thing you can provide with a mobile home community. You can provide affordable housing.
Yeah.
Because I can afford to drop the rent 25% on a home to capture the market. Whereas with a single family home, it's different. So you have a lot of flexibility in this business, being in the mobile home park business.
Yeah.
Whereas we don't have in single family homes or even apartments.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I had the same experience with Craigslist, but I did post an ad in St. Augustine. I didn't get that many calls. I maybe had like 5 or 6 calls. I put like a rent-to-own ad up there, and I got like 5 or 6 calls like in the week, and I'm like, ugh. That's not enough to get me excited. That's not enough to make me feel comfortable that I can move quickly 20 however many park-owned homes that were there. And so I was like, you know what, like my backup plan always, and this is before I even started buying parks, my backup plan when I've owned homes and any other types of real estate, if Craigslist isn't big in a lot of markets, or it's bigger now, but if you're like outside of a metro, if you're like in a tertiary market or like a Palatka, you can't rely on Craigslist. In fact, a lot of those markets, you just have to assume that people still read newspapers. Like, half the market probably doesn't even have internet. I joke about that, but like everyone has smartphones now, but still, like Craigslist just isn't popular everywhere, and so you can't rely on that to run your test ads. And so I would go put out bandit signs. I'd get blank white signs, and I'd write rent to own, 2-bedroom mobile home, Palatka, and then like I'd create like a temporary phone number like that was local, and I put the phone number there, and it would just go to like a voicemail, and it allowed me to track the calls that came in. And I actually went and put like a dozen of those out around Palatka, and my phone actually rang off the hook, and I'm like, so I wasn't concerned about that. I wasn't concerned about actually now being able to move these things. My biggest concern was the lack of comps to make me confident in that big of a rent bump. And honestly, I just had never owned a park before, and so you hear people in theory talk about, oh, no one's ever going to move. As long as you just bring it to market, even if it's a $100 increase, no one's going to move. Like, that's great in theory, but when you actually have to put your own hard-earned cash up and risk it, and then basically, rely on the fact that like no one is going to move after you raise the rents, that's tough. And I literally couldn't swallow it. I guess I didn't have the guts for it, and I didn't, and I backed out of it. So now I know better, because we've done bigger increases than that, and we've never had an issue. And now we have no concerns whatsoever raising rents, especially if they're jumps of $50, $60, $70. We just don't have an issue with it, because we do what you do. We go and we add value, and but we only ever take it to market. We never go. We don't like break thresholds. Like, if the market's 250, we don't go to 350. Like we don't really push it above market, but we have no issue bringing it to market. But
right,
you live and you learn, right?
Absolutely. So one thing I do as an investor is I move quick. If I see a deal, I don't play around with it. I mean, I'll have an offer the same day. I'll be able to get all my documents, get everything done, and I'll try and close within 30 days on it. So that's a big benefit, by being an investor in this, is if you can move quick in it. A lot of sellers, they're anxious to close if they've been having a park that's been out there for a while and haven't got any bites. Mm-hmm. So I try to move quick when I make a move on something.
So are you mostly getting owner financing, or have you done bank financing deals as well?
Yeah, I've done some bank financing. But a lot of times if I give them their price, I'll ask them for my terms. So that usually appeals to a seller, instead of bank financing, because instead of running away with $1 million, what's he going to do with it? Because he's not going to get any kind of return on it.
Exactly.
If he just wants to, sit on it. So I give him a decent return and show him a track record. So we can usually get him to go owner finance, and then we pay him off in 24 months or so.
Yep. Okay. Good deal. And so what's your normal deal look like nowadays? Like, what are you looking for? So you sold Palatka. That was a 70 space park. Is that like your normal size, or have you done bigger parks? Have you done smaller parks? Like, what's the perfect park for you?
Well, there's a lot of players at 100 plus. So I try to stay below the radar. I try to look at parks that are under 100. Because of economies of scale, it needs to be over 50 spaces. I don't like to mess with a 15 or 20 space park. It just there's not enough there for me, not enough meat on the bone. So I try to stay under 100, because when you get over 100, I'm competing with the big boys like you and these other.
We're small boys.
these other big boys that are out there. So I try to stay under 100, maybe 50, 60, 70 is a good spot for me. That seems to be the sweet spot. Obviously, city services. And that was city sewer, city water, so that's something that's very rare to find in Florida. And like I said, I look at park-owned homes. I know a lot of people don't, but I do, because I like the flexibility it gives me.
Meaning the flexibility, meaning you can go in and actually reset the lot rents? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, I do, because if a resident's paying $450 a month, they don't care if their lot rent's $150 or $350. They can care less. It's $450 a month. So if you could push your lot rent at $350 underneath a $450 payment total, then that gives them $100 towards the home. And the value's in the land. The value is not on the home. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
So,
have you ever got any pushback like this Palatka park? You sold it. Did the appraiser that was maybe the buyer was a cash buyer, so it didn't make a difference. But when you push it like that, I mean, there's still going to be potential issues with, I don't know what the market is a plaque anymore. I mean, could you truly justify 350 as a market rent based on comps in the area? I mean, were there other supporting comps that were that high?
Yeah, but the park was a lot nicer than mine. So that would have been kind of tough to do if an appraiser would have come in, I think.
Okay, gotcha.
So I would have probably had to offer some other amenities to support that lot rent.
Okay.
Like exterior landscaping that we would offer or something like that. But yeah, this is a cash buyer.
But even so, even at 250 lot rents with, I don't know how many empty pads you had or how many, if it was 100% occupied when you sold it, but even then, you could still justify a $1.4 million sales price. I mean, the number still makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good deal.
Absolutely. So when you throw the 30 homes in. So
yeah, absolutely. And so, have you ever bought any parks that have a lot of empty pads? Like, has part of your business model ever been buying a park that, let's say, is 30%, but vacant pads, to where you've got to move a used park-owned homes in, or would you just prefer to have the homes there, even if they're vacant park-owned? Have you ever gone on that business model before?
Yeah, and that's part of this business that I think's changed a lot. About 5, 6, 7 years ago, you could buy homes for $2,000. You can drive through parks and just pick them up from individuals. It was very easy to do, and that's what we did on a park that I had in Illinois. We bought a tremendous amount of homes from that area. But now there's a lot more players in the game, so the price of homes has gone up dramatically. So it's a little bit different being able to buy. Usually, I always buy singles. I never buy a double wide. Mm-hmm. So we'll run an ad in the local paper looking for single wide homes, and we'll try and buy them that way to fill the park. But to answer your question, I try to keep it about 30% of vacant pads is the maximum I'll go. I just don't want to go any more than that. There's a lot of heavy lifting involved in getting homes and bringing them in. I would prefer a rent raise or a utility pass through, something like that.
Have you looked into the Clayton Cash program? Have you considered that?
I've got an offer on a park now, and that's something I'm probably going to bring in.
Okay.
I'm going to start adding that.
Yeah.
To fill spots. So yeah, I'm probably going to go with that. Have you had some success with that?
Yeah, we're really just getting ramped up in it. We've got a bunch of homes on order right now, and I think the first one's being delivered literally in like a week or two. So we've got parks in a bunch of different states, and so it's a pain in the butt to get set up as a retailer in all these different states. So we're kind of at the tail end of that process of being set up, and we have 2 parks right now, 2 different states where we're actually already order homes for. And so all the other parks we have, some of them have more vacant pads than others. Like we have a couple parks that are full, but we got a park in North Carolina right now. It's kind of like the 800-pound gorilla. It actually performs incredibly well as it sits now. It's 131 spaces, and 77 are occupied. With I think about 90% of them are lot renters only, and we picked that up at a great deal. But all the pads in there are fully developed. It was full at one time, but the guy that built it is the guy we bought it from. And when the chattel crisis happened in 2000 or 1999 or whatever it happened, all those that were in there got repoed out, and he never put them back in. I mean, he literally he's like, whatever, that's not my business model. I wanted people to bring their homes. I'm not going to go buy them. So we're going to fill that place up. It's a great market. It's in between Raleigh-Durham and Greensboro in North Carolina, so it's right off the interstate, and I know we have a demand for it, and so that one's going to be the real test. Like that park is going to be the true test, because we're going to start ordering about 5 homes at a time and see how it goes. And it's a big drag in the sleigh, because the manager does great there now. She's Spanish. She speaks Spanish, but she doesn't speak the greatest English. Most of our residents are Spanish, but there's also a mixed population that wants to buy in there, not just Spanish. And so I'm wondering how our sales process, we've got to put together a pretty elaborate sales process in order to successfully pull this off by bringing that many homes. And I'm timid as to how many we bring in at one time, because I'm just not sure how it's all going to play out. So I'll give you an update in a couple months to let you know how this all goes with the Clayton Cash program. Because we don't have any parks where we're just buying 1 or 2. We're basically like looking to bring in like 5 at a time in each one of the parks. And so we've got to have a pretty big sales infrastructure in place, and it's got to work. If it doesn't work, we end up with these homes in 12 months. And So, but we'll see how it goes. I'm excited about it, honestly, because it's not just the additional revenues that we're going to get out of it, but it's just the overall increase of appearance that you get out of the park. I mean, bringing brand new homes in and kind of peppering them in between older homes. I mean, just a massive improvement aesthetically to the park. And so I'm actually just as excited about that component of it as I am the additional revenue stream that's going to come from it. So I'm looking forward to it. I really am. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and that's a great niche that they've filled, because before we had to do the selling, and if you did that, then you had to get a license. But with that new program, as I understand, they take care of the whole process.
Well, you still have to be licensed. Your park still has to be licensed. Yeah, you still have to be licensed, because you're basically acting. Essentially, what you are is you're acting as a Clayton certified dealer, essentially. It just happens that your retail lot is your mobile home park. I mean, and that's really how it's being set up. They're bringing a home in and sitting it on your retail lot, which just happens to be a lot inside your mobile home park. But yeah, so that's what I was getting at. Like it takes some time to get set up. You got to go through the dealer process. Get set up as a dealer in whatever state you're in. Go through all that, the application and getting bonded and all that kind of stuff. And but I think it's worth it. I'm not too like that part's. It is what it is. It's just some of the states require monthly reporting. Some others are quarterly. Some are just yearly. And so we just follow the regulations for each state and do what we need to do to get set up, because I think the program's worth it. Because really the alternative to the Clayton Cash program is very capital intensive. You're buying used park-owned homes, your pockets run dry really quickly, and if your only option to exit out of those is just by doing like a rent to own, you don't get your money back fast enough. Now if you knew you're in a market where you could sell them for cash, like, hey, I bring in this used home, I got 10 grand into it, but I've got people chomping at the bit to buy this thing for 15 grand or 12 grand, whatever. You just get your money back out of it right away. Then that makes sense. But to sink a bunch of hundreds of thousands of dollars into used park-owned homes that you can only turn around and do like a lease to own on, I don't like that model. It's just it's a challenging model. It's a tough one. So
yeah, well, in the park I'm getting ready to purchase, we've got a lot of park-owned homes. We've got probably 30 vacant, and so we're going to have a brand new manager in place. And so, yeah, that's why I just signed up with RenterText.
Yeah.
Where they do all the screening, all the advertising, and they're going to be bringing them in and bringing all the people in, following up with people, making the appointments, so I can just have my managers just simply open the door and show them the home. That we shouldn't have to mess with any of the follow-up. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that, because we've had some success with them in the past.
Yeah, we've been using them. I think we've got them in 2 or 3 parks. We do a little bit of both. I mean, some of our park managers are better at following our rules with regards to Craigslist postings and doing it on a regular basis, and some aren't, and it's less brain damage. And the one, instead of me yelling at them once a week saying, you better get ads up there or I'm firing you, it's easier sometimes just to put the darn RenterText process in place. And I actually don't think it's as good. I don't like it as much as like when we write our own ads, because the manager can write them. I give them normally like 10 templates to start from and let them like kind of put their own twist on the ads. I think they get written better that way than just like doing a copy and paste in RenterText. But it is what it is. RenterText is definitely a good automation model, and I think it's very helpful for the industry. So last question for you, Clint. What is we have all made mistakes. I know my mistake is not buying that Placa Park that you just sold, but
sorry, man.
No, man. I think it's awesome. I'm glad that we've met. So, what do you think the biggest mistake is that you've made in this industry, and what would you have done differently?
Not doing proper due diligence.
How'd it bite you?
I got out breaking even, and I tried to be in the home rental business. The homes are very, very old, and they just required so much maintenance. It was just chewing up, all the rent. So I didn't do adequate due diligence. My business plan, I didn't really have a solid business plan in place. I think you have to know who you are as an investor. You have to know if it's a 1975 home, you have to know exactly what you're going to do with it. And for me, I'm selling it. I'm selling it for all I can get cash, and that's it. And I'm going down the road. I just want the lot rent, because dirt doesn't break. So I think you have to know as an investor exactly who you are. And at that time, I really didn't have a good grasp what I was doing with a 1978 model home or 1985, what I was going to do with that. So I think you got to really do your due diligence, knowing your marketplace, knowing what you can sell homes for, and I guess, know who you are as an investor.
Mm-hmm.
Know if you want to buy and hold, know if you want to be a fix and flip kind of guy, or if you just want to, get somebody like you that handles everything where I just get a check. Know who you are.
Yeah, that's great advice. And it's interesting because are there a lot of other fix and flip guys out there in this industry that you know of? I mean, that do what you do? Because I don't know many. It seems like most people that lead, and I'm sure that it's in the circles I run or the people I talk to, but it just seems like a lot of the people that I've gotten to know in this business are more, either they were long-term investors, but now they're getting out of it because they're just older, or they're looking to get into it, but they're looking to buy for the cash flow. But very rarely do I come across someone that is in the fix and flip game. And I've always been under the impression that it's mainly because they're not making any more parks. They're actually going away faster than they're being built. And so there's like a limited supply, and they become harder and harder to find. And so do you think that, I guess there's two parts to this question. Number one is, do you think there's a lot of others out there that do what you do? But then also, do you have a fear that there's going to be a point in time to where it's just going to be ridiculously hard for you to find good opportunities because there's more and more professional operators getting into this space?
Yeah, I think it'll be a challenge, but I think making relationships with agents, advertising, in all different forms. I think you guys have talked about it a few times. You did a great job on some podcasts on how to find parks. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think it is going to be a challenge, but there's always going to be parks out there for sale, always.
Yeah.
And if it's not for sale at the price you want for today, keep checking, because time discounts real estate.
Yep.
And when the owners sit on it and the phone doesn't ring, they're going to drop the price. And if you stay in touch with them, a lot of times you can be the first one there.
Yep. No, you make a great point. Also, I get a lot of people that ask me that question, about, being the fact that they're not being built anymore and there's more professional operators getting into this market. It's still a very fragmented industry, but it's defragmenting very fastly. And a lot of people ask me, they have a concern, what do you think the horizon is? Do you think, that there's only a 10-year window to get into this business? And I think it will become more challenging as time goes on, as more professional operators get into this business. But also, just because a professional operator is getting into the business doesn't mean they're going to be a good professional operator. In fact, I've seen a lot of deals. Recently, we ran across I can't even think of who the operator was, but it was a pretty big operator. They owned at least 4,000 or 5,000 pads, and they had an opportunity that I was just dumbfounded that they let it go as long as they did, and it was suffering greatly. And same happened with the park we had in contract in Iowa, a year or two ago. Same thing, park owner owned 3,000 or 4,000 pads. This became his redhead stepchild, just neglected it for a number of years. And so there's still opportunities out there, and there still will be. There will be people that think they want to get into this business, but they won't have necessarily the wherewithal, or they won't have the skill set to do it right. Because it's a very lucrative business, but it's actually got a lot of moving pieces to it, and it's very different from owning and operating apartment buildings or single family homes. And it's just different. That's the best way I can put it. It's not rocket science by any means, but it's also not super easy to do it right. And so I think the opportunities will come from those that buy and realize that they shouldn't have bought in the mobile home park space. And they want to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And there's 55,000 parks out there. So, and the baby boomers are getting older. So I think there's going to be supply. I think in the future, there's always going to be supply. There'll be REOs. So I think they'll be out there. Now there are more players in the game, but like I said, your niche. You find out what your niche is. I go through a lot of parks. I go through hundreds of parks before I finally find what I'm looking for. Yeah. But just got to find the niche.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, Clint, I really appreciate you coming on the show today, man. It's been a pleasure actually meeting you and talking with you. And for those that are out there, if they want to reach out to you and just check and see what you're doing, or maybe they've got a park they want to run past you, someone that's on the West Coast or just anywhere, is there a way that our listeners could reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Clinton Grimm, GOIM, @gmail.com.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, that's all we have for today's episode. Before we say goodbye, I just want to remind you guys of the free gift that Charles and I offer to listeners that take the time to go over to iTunes and leave a review. If you leave that review in iTunes, we'll give you the exact cold call script that we use in our very own park business. And we buy a good portion of the parks that we buy them from cold calling efforts. The other component of that is direct mail. But we will give you the exact cold call script that we use. And how to redeem this gift from us, what you need to do is after you submit that iTunes review, go ahead and shoot us an email to gift@mobilehomeparkacademy.com. This tells who you are and what screen name that you used when you left that review in iTunes, and we'll go ahead and send out your free gift to you. Also, be sure to stop by the Mobile Home Park Academy website at mobilehomeparkacademy.com. You can listen to all of our previous podcast shows, as well as download a free copy of our popular ebook, The 21 Biggest Mistakes Investors Make When Purchasing Their First Mobile Home Park and How to Avoid Them. Clint, did you read that book? Did you download it? Did you get it?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Okay, good deal.
Excellent book.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Well, that's all we have for today, guys. So this is Kevin Butt from Mobile Home Park Academy signing off.
Congratulations for taking the necessary steps to achieving massive success through the highly lucrative niche of mobile home park investing. Be sure to visit our website, mobilehomeparkacademy.com, to download your free digital ebook version of the 21 biggest mistakes investors make when buying their first mobile home park and how you can avoid them. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our free monthly mobile home park investing newsletter, which is jammed full of valuable tips, tricks, and strategies to help you accelerate your path to success as a mobile home park investor. More information about this podcast and its hosts can be found by visiting mobilehomeparkacademy.com.